In a world moving faster than your breath can follow, it's easy to feel the quiet ache of disconnection. You scroll through endless feeds, rush through unfinished days, and carry the weight of expectations that never seem to lift. Even success, when it arrives, can feel strangely hollow, as if something essential remains untouched. Many people today live with that subtle emptiness, not because they lack achievement, but because they lack direction. From here, we turn to an older kind of guidance, a form of ancient wisdom shaped by storms, uncertainty, and the search for inner clarity. In this video, we explore how Stoic philosophy can help you uncover your true purpose in life, using steady values and simple daily practices to anchor the mind. Through calm narration and reflective storytelling, we'll walk into the heart of what it means to live with intention. In the quiet spaces between your thoughts, there is a small voice that asks where your life is heading and why certain days feel heavier than others. It is a question as old as civilization, and Stoic philosophy offers a steady lantern for anyone walking through that inner fog. When you pause long enough, you begin to sense that your search for clarity is not a modern problem, but part of the human story itself. From here, we turn to the foundations of Stoic wisdom, a way of seeing the world that has guided countless people through fear, uncertainty, and the constant pressures of daily life. Even though this philosophy emerged more than 2,000 years ago, it speaks directly to the emotional storms that define the modern experience. You feel stressed, overwhelmed, distracted, stretched thin, and yet the solution may lie in a practice so ancient that its simplicity surprises you. Now imagine the world of ancient Athens or the bustling streets of Rome. Empires rose and fell. Markets collapsed. Leaders struggled with moral dilemmas, and individuals faced the same inner questions you face today. Stoicism did not arise in peaceful times. It emerged in hardship because hardship clarifies what truly matters. That is why its insights still echo in our age of noise and accelerated living. When you hear the name Marcus Aurelius, you might think of a distant emperor, yet he wrestled with exhaustion, disappointment, and the weight of responsibility. Epictetus, once a slave, carried a depth of resilience shaped by hardship. They lived completely different lives, but both discovered the same truth: peace begins within, not in the shifting conditions of the outside world. This is why their words continue to reach people today, regardless of culture or century. From here, we consider how Stoic values invite you to explore the terrain of your own mind. They ask you to examine what you believe, what you chase, and what you fear. In a world overflowing with options, these teachings help you develop inner simplicity, not as a withdrawal from life, but as a grounding force. When everything around you feels unstable, simplicity feels like returning home. As you move deeper into this philosophy, you start to understand that Stoicism is less about controlling emotions and more about guiding them. It teaches that your mind can remain stable even when life is unpredictable. This idea speaks directly to people today who are overwhelmed by the constant pull of technology, productivity, and comparison. The noise of life grows louder, yet your ability to stay centered grows stronger when you nurture the right internal habits. But there's another layer that often goes unnoticed. Stoic philosophy connects your daily actions to something larger: your character. It reminds you that purpose is not discovered in a single revelation. Instead, purpose unfolds gradually through choices, discipline, kindness, and awareness. This kind of growth is quiet, almost invisible, yet it transforms the way you move through the world. Now imagine standing at a crossroads in your own life. You may have achievements, responsibilities, or long-term goals, yet something within you still feels unsettled. Stoic wisdom helps you turn inward, not with judgment, but with curiosity. It encourages you to ask whether your life aligns with your values or whether you are simply moving through routines without intention. This moment of reflection becomes a powerful turning point. As we explore further, we begin to see why Stoicism survives across centuries. It offers clarity without dogma and structure without rigidity. People return to it because it refuses to promise an easy life. Instead, it offers tools to navigate a difficult one. Those tools, awareness, discipline, gratitude, and calm, never lose relevance. They become even more important in a world filled with distraction and uncertainty. From here, we turn toward the heart of the Stoic path, the belief that your inner world shapes your experience more than external circumstances ever will. This is why the teachings of ancient philosophers still feel surprisingly modern. They help you understand that suffering often comes from the stories you tell yourself, and peace comes from learning how to shape those stories with honesty and strength. But there's something deeper still. Stoicism is not meant to make you passive or detached. It encourages full engagement with life, grounded in clarity and intention. When you embrace its principles, you start to notice that many of your struggles are rooted not in events, but in your relationship to them. You learn to separate what is truly important from what is merely urgent or loud. Now imagine carrying that understanding into your daily routine. You begin to notice how often you react instead of respond. You observe moments where stress rises simply because expectations do not match reality. Gradually, you learn to pause, to breathe, and to meet life with steadiness rather than tension. This shift may seem small, but it changes the entire atmosphere of your mind. From here, we consider the reflective questions at the center of this philosophy. What gives a teaching the power to last thousands of years? Why do the insights of ancient thinkers still resonate with you in a world of satellites, artificial intelligence, and constant hyperstimulation? Perhaps the answer lies in the timeless nature of human experience. Technology changes, but the mind still struggles with desire, fear, comparison, and confusion. Stoicism speaks directly to these struggles. And so, we return to the final question: what can this ancient philosophy reveal about the way you are living and the way you could live better? It suggests that purpose is not found in the distant future, but in the quiet decisions you make today. It reminds you that inner peace is built through practice, not chance, and it invites you to explore a deeper form of strength, one rooted not in control, but in acceptance and clarity. This is the foundation of inner purpose. The next step is to return to its origins and understand where this enduring wisdom began. When you look back across the long arc of human history, you begin to notice a pattern. Every civilization, no matter how powerful or fragile, eventually faces the same questions about uncertainty, loss, and the struggle for meaning. From here, we return to the landscapes of ancient Greece and Rome, where Stoic philosophy first emerged not as an academic exercise, but as a response to the turbulence of its time. Imagine the city of Athens in the aftermath of political collapse. Markets once filled with optimism now echoed with tension, and people searched for guidance that could withstand the storms of fate. It was in this environment that a man named Zeno began teaching in a public space known as the Stoipoikal, the painted porch. He offered something radically different from the noisy debates of the era, a philosophy that grounded strength not in power or possessions, but in inner stability. From here, the scene shifts to Rome, a world defined by military expansion, shifting alliances, and fragile leadership. It was a place where the future often felt unpredictable, where people carried both opportunity and fear in equal measure. The Romans adopted Stoicism not because it promised control, but because it taught acceptance. It offered a way to face uncertainty with dignity, reminding individuals that the only true power lies in self-mastery. Now imagine the daily life of an ordinary citizen in those times. Political upheaval, disease, loss, and unexpected change were constant companions. There were no guarantees, no safety nets, no stable promises. People needed a philosophy that could endure, not only in moments of crisis, but in the quiet hours of reflection. Stoicism became a kind of inner compass, helping individuals navigate a world that often felt overwhelming. From here, we turn to the figures who shaped Stoic thought across centuries. Marcus Aurelius stands among them like a quiet mountain, firm, reflective, and deeply human. He spent his nights writing to himself, capturing reminders about resilience, calm, and humility. Although he ruled an empire, He often wrote as if he were speaking to someone struggling through an ordinary day. His reflections became a map for anyone seeking clarity amid chaos. Epictetus, once a slave, brought another dimension to the philosophy. His life was marked by hardship, yet he discovered strength in the one place no one could take from him, his mind. His teachings emphasize that your freedom lies not in circumstance, but in the choices you make within it. This idea, simple on the surface, has shaped countless lives across generations, searching for meaning beyond external success. From here, we consider Seneca, a statesman whose life was woven with tension, ambition, and reflection. His writings explore the complexities of wealth, time, and mortality. He shows that Stoic philosophy is not about rejecting life's comforts, but about understanding their temporary nature. His work reminds you that clarity comes from self-awareness, not avoidance. But there's another layer, one that stretches far beyond the borders of Greece and Rome. While Stoicism grew in the West, similar ideas took shape in the East. Philosophers like Lao Tzu explored the wisdom of flowing with life instead of resisting it. Teachers within Hindu and Buddhist traditions emphasized release from attachment, compassion for oneself, and the pursuit of inner equilibrium. These teachings evolved separately, yet they resonate like harmonizing notes in a vast universal melody. From here, we begin to see how different cultures recognize the same truth. You cannot control the world, but you can learn to guide your own mind. Whether through Stoic discipline, Taoist softness, or Buddhist awareness, the message remains: peace arises from within, and wisdom grows through practice. Now imagine these ideas traveling through time, carried from dusty scrolls to modern libraries, from ancient classrooms to digital platforms. They survive not because they belong to the past, but because they answer questions that never fade. People today still wrestle with stress, grief, ambition, comparison, and distraction. The forms have changed, but the inner struggles remain familiar. From here, we explore the core principle that unites these traditions, the distinction between what you can control and what you cannot. This insight becomes a guiding thread for anyone seeking clarity in a confusing world. It teaches you to shift your attention inward, towards your thoughts, your actions, and your attitude, because these are the tools that shape your experience of life. Consider how liberating this idea can be. When you stop trying to control events, people, or outcomes, you free enormous energy that was once spent in resistance. You begin to respond instead of react. You learn to see challenges not as threats, but as invitations to grow. This simple shift transforms your emotional landscape, making space for calm in the middle of conflict. From here, the philosophy expands into a practice. Stoicism is not meant to sit untouched on a shelf. It is meant to be lived. The ancients believed wisdom comes from everyday choices: how you speak, how you treat others, how you handle disappointment, how you navigate joy. The essence of Stoic evolution lies in this lived experience, this steady shaping of character through consistent action. But there's something even deeper worth noticing. Stoicism does not promise a life free from suffering. Instead, it teaches you how to meet suffering with steadiness. It reminds you that adversity can sharpen your clarity, that loss can deepen your compassion, and that discomfort can strengthen your understanding of what truly matters. This is why the philosophy has remained relevant for more than 2 millennia. Now imagine bringing these lessons into your own journey. You begin to see how the teachings of ancient philosophers align with your modern challenges. You notice how often your stress comes from wanting the world to match your expectations. You realize how rarely you pause to question your reactions. And slowly, you begin to understand why this philosophy has survived the erosion of time. From here, we move toward the final insight. Stoic thought evolves because it adapts to each person who practices it. It changes shape in the hands of every generation, yet its core remains steady. The idea that your thoughts, choices, and attitude determine the quality of your life is as powerful today as it was in ancient marketplaces and royal courts. Stoicism is not a relic, It is a living tradition woven into the way modern people seek clarity, strength, and meaning. And as we move forward, we explore how these ancient insights can become part of your daily life, shaping not only your actions, but your inner world. There comes a moment in every person's journey when knowledge alone is no longer enough. You can read, reflect, study, and understand, but until wisdom becomes action, it remains distant, like a light you can see but never touch. Stoic philosophy has survived for more than 2,000 years not because it is merely understood, but because it is practiced. Stoicism comes alive the moment it moves from the mind into the rhythm of your daily life. From here, you begin to realize something essential. Theory is only the doorway, walking through it is what changes you. The ancient Stoics believed that philosophy meant training, not memorizing, not debating, not collecting ideas. Real philosophy was a discipline, a way of living, a continuous shaping of the self. And in a modern world full of noise, distraction, and constant comparison, this shift from theory to action becomes even more necessary. Imagine starting your day with the intention to live just one principle rather than trying to master them all. You remind yourself that you cannot control everything, but you can control how you respond. You choose to act with clarity rather than confusion, with patience rather than frustration. Each small decision becomes a thread woven into the fabric of your character. This is where Stoic purpose begins, not in grand gestures, but in quiet consistency. From here, let's explore how this philosophy unfolds in the different areas of your life, beginning with your work. In a world that celebrates speed, pressure, and constant achievement, Stoicism offers a different approach. It invites you to bring your full attention to the task at hand. Instead of worrying about outcomes you cannot control, you focus on effort, presence, and integrity. When fear of failure arises, you treat it not as an enemy, but as a signal to return to your values. You do the work because it aligns with who you are, not because the world demands validation from you. In this mindset, productivity is no longer frantic. It becomes purposeful. Challenges stop feeling like threats. They become training opportunities to sharpen your focus, strengthen your patience, and refine your discipline. And slowly you begin to see that your work becomes more meaningful when your identity is not attached to external results, but to the quality of your action. Next, we move into relationships, the place where emotions often run high and reactions come quickly. Stoicism does not ask you to become cold or detached. Instead, it teaches you to pause long enough to listen, to understand before you judge, to respond with intention instead of reacting from impulse. You begin to realize that every person you meet carries their own struggles, their own fears, their own stories that you may never fully know. Compassion grows naturally from this understanding. When conflict appears, instead of trying to control the other person, you turn inward and examine your own patterns. You ask, what value do I want to express right now? Patience, honesty, respect? And in that moment of clarity, the energy of the interaction shifts. You bring presence instead of pressure, curiosity instead of criticism. Without even trying to change others, your behavior begins to influence the entire atmosphere around you. From here, we travel deeper into the inner world, where Stoicism's true power takes shape. Many people misunderstand Stoicism as emotional suppression, but this is far from its essence. The Stoics believed in facing emotions directly, observing them without fear, and understanding their roots. When you feel anger, you examine what expectation was violated. When you feel anxiety, you look at what future scenario your mind is clinging to. When you feel sadness, you allow it to soften you rather than harden you. Alongside this emotional awareness, gratitude becomes an anchor. Each day, you train your mind to notice the simple blessings you once overlooked. A breath made consciously, a moment of silence, a conversation, a sunrise. Gratitude becomes a stabilizing force, reminding you that much of what you experience is already enough. And slowly, something begins to build within you, an inner stillness. Not emptiness, not numbness, but a grounded, steady presence. This stillness is not an escape from life, it is the strength to move through life with clarity. The more you cultivate it, the more resilient you become. From here, we turn to the habits that weave Stoic philosophy into your daily routine. These habits do not require dramatic effort, they require intention. You begin your mornings with a few minutes of silence, not to escape the world, but to meet the day with awareness. You breathe, observe, and settle into yourself before the world begins asking for your attention. This simple ritual sets the tone for everything that follows. Then, as you move through your day, you write down a thought or intention. It may be a principle, a reminder, or a question. This act of journaling becomes a quiet conversation with your inner self. It helps you track your growth, your challenges, and the patterns that shape your life. One question becomes especially powerful: is this within my control? You ask it during stress, during confusion, during conflict, during disappointment. Each time, the answer guides you back to clarity. If something is beyond your control, you release it. If something is within your control, you take responsibility. This question becomes a compass, ensuring that your energy is spent wisely, not wasted. With time, these practices create a shift that is almost invisible at first. You react less, you observe more, you carry yourself with calm even in chaotic moments. You stop chasing things that do not matter and begin nurturing the things that do. And as this inner transformation grows, so does your sense of purpose. You start noticing that peace does not come from the absence of difficulty. Peace grows from the presence of discipline and understanding. Strength is no longer something you force, it becomes the natural outcome of living in alignment with your values. And slowly, the stillness you cultivate begins to feel like power, a power that does not dominate, but stabilizes, a power that brings clarity rather than conflict. This is the essence of living Stoic purpose daily. It is not about perfection, it is about practice. It is about choosing to return, again and again, to the present moment, to your values, to your inner compass. With each returning, you become slightly wiser, slightly calmer, slightly more yourself. And eventually, what begins as practice becomes your nature, the stillness becomes your strength, and that strength becomes the quiet foundation of your peace. For thousands of years, human beings have looked outward for answers, seeking security in possessions, validation in achievements, and direction from the ever-changing world around them. Yet across time, through the lives of emperors, prisoners, philosophers, and modern thinkers, one message continues to echo: true power begins within. When Marcus Aurelius wrote his Meditations alone under a dim lamp, when Epictetus taught despite living much of his life as a slave, when Seneca reflected on impermanence in letters to a friend, and even when Viktor Frankl found meaning in the darkest conditions imaginable, each of them touched the same eternal truth: mastery of life begins with mastery of oneself. This truth is not tied to any specific century or culture. It does not belong only to the ancient world or to the intellectual elite. It belongs to anyone willing to turn inward. Anyone brave enough to confront their fears, question their assumptions, and commit to becoming the kind of person they respect. It's the same wisdom you find in Eastern teachings from Loti, who wrote about flowing with life rather than fighting it, and in the Buddhist reminders about mindfulness, presence, and release. The details differ, but the heart of the teaching remains the same. You cannot control the world, but you can always control how you meet it. When you reflect on the journey up to this point, you begin to see how each lesson fits into a larger picture. Stoicism is not about suppressing emotion, but about not being controlled by it. It is not about rejecting the external world, but about navigating it with clarity. It is not about perfection, but continuous refinement. And above all, it is a reminder that the path of self-mastery is open to everyone, no matter your circumstances, your struggles, or your past. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, yet he struggled with anger, fatigue, and doubt. Epictetus had nothing but his mind, yet his teachings shaped history. Viktor Frankl endured unimaginable suffering, yet discovered that even in extreme conditions, human beings can choose their attitude. Ryan Holiday, a modern author dedicated to reviving ancient Stoic ideas, emphasizes that the daily practice of clarity, discipline, and humility is just as relevant now as it was 2,000 years ago. These individuals stand as reminders that wisdom is not abstract, it is lived. So what do these timeless lessons reveal? First, self-mastery is not about domination. It is not about controlling others or forcing your will on the world. It is about learning to guide your own thoughts, regulate your emotions, and shape your actions according to your values. It is an inner freedom that no one can take from you. Second, stillness is a form of strength. In a world full of noise, expectation, and distraction, the ability to pause, to breathe, to reflect, becomes an act of courage. Stillness is not laziness, it is clarity. It allows you to separate what is essential from what is unnecessary, to act with purpose rather than impulse. Third, discipline is liberation, not the harsh, punishing discipline many people imagine, but the quiet consistency of choosing what aligns with your purpose. Discipline is saying no to what pulls you away from yourself and yes to what helps you grow. And finally, meaning is created, not found. You do not stumble upon it by accident. You shape it through your actions, your choices, your habits, your mindset. Meaning emerges when you live in alignment with your highest values, when you transform suffering into strength, and when you use every experience as material for growth. These lessons matter because the modern world makes it incredibly easy to drift, to be pulled by trends, overwhelmed by information, and unconsciously shaped by external expectations. Without awareness, days turn into weeks, and weeks turn into years, and suddenly you realize you have been living according to someone else's script. Stoicism invites you to rewrite that script, starting from the inside. And this brings us to the reflection at the heart of this part. In a world that constantly pushes us to move faster, speak louder, and chase more, stillness becomes a radical act of self-respect. When everyone is rushing, the person who pauses stands out. The person who listens deeply, who considers their choices, who responds with intention rather than reaction, this person is practicing a quiet form of rebellion. A rebellion not against society, but against mindlessness. So take a moment to ask yourself, who am I becoming? Not who the world wants you to be, not who you think you should be to impress others, but the person you are shaping through your thoughts, actions, and habits. What values guide my life? Is it integrity, compassion, courage, curiosity, discipline? Or is it fear, comparison, approval, and convenience? Your values are not what you claim, they are what you choose each day. Am I moving closer to my purpose, or drifting away from it? Every decision, no matter how small, is a step in some direction. Every habit is either strengthening or weakening you. Every reaction either brings you closer to the person you want to be or pulls you further from yourself. Stoicism does not ask you to have all the answers. It asks you to live the questions, to examine the way you move through the world, to turn inward with honesty and outward with compassion, to accept what you cannot change and devote yourself fully to what you can. And perhaps the most important lesson of all, self-mastery is a lifelong journey. There is no finish line, there is only the daily practice of awareness, intention, and growth. Some days you will succeed, some days you will struggle, but every day gives you another chance to begin again with more clarity, more strength, and more understanding than before. In the quiet moments when you are most honest with yourself, you will feel it. The path of self-mastery is not just about becoming stronger, it is about becoming whole. Not about controlling life, but learning to meet life with wisdom, courage, and peace. And that journey, timeless and universal, always begins within. In the end, discovering your true purpose is not a journey across the world, but a journey inward. It is a quiet unfolding, a a gradual awakening to the values that guide you, the choices that define you, and the strength that has always lived within. Stoic philosophy reminds you that clarity does not come from chasing more, but from understanding what truly matters. It offers simple, steady tools: awareness, discipline, presence that help you walk through life with intention rather than impulse. When you learn to master your thoughts and shape your actions, you begin to shape your future. You become the author of your days instead of a passenger carried by circumstance. If this reflection speaks to you, feel free to share the insight that stayed with you most. Leave a comment about your own journey, or subscribe for more calm explorations into Stoic wisdom and the art of living with purpose.